You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is writer director Michael McGowan. And we're going to be talking about his brand new film called All My Puny Sorrows. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely having you here. This film I don't know if it premiered at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, but it was at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, and there was a lot of buzz about this movie. And a number of people told me about it and said that I must have you on my show. So I'm happy that we were able to schedule you and have you on the show. Unfortunately, I did not get to see it at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, but I have enjoyed watching it since then. Lots to discuss with this film.
Yeah, no, it was I was unable to go to Santa Barbara, but our world premiere was the Toronto International Film Festival, and then it's played a bunch since then. But that's great that I hadn't really heard anything about Santa Barbara, so that's nice to know.
Yes, there was a lot of buzz, a lot of buzz about it. So our listeners know and our viewers know. Why don't you give us a brief synopsis of what All My Puny Sorrows is all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a love story between two sisters, and the short synopsis is one wants to kill herself, and the other one obviously wants her to live, and it's the dynamics against this terrible thing that this family operates, and that's sort of the bleak description of it. And as you know, you've seen the film, there's a lot of heart and humor in the film, like a surprising amount, and it's based on a book by Miriam Taves, sort of an international bestseller, I would say, and really not loosely based on her own experiences. Sort of the major events in both the film and the book took place in her life.
Oh wow, I did not realize that it was based partially on what had happened in her life. What made you decide, even though it was an international bestseller, what made you decide to tackle this subject in this book and create this beautiful movie?
Uh, there's a few things. I mean, I hadn't seen the rationale for suicide portrayed the way she had written about. I mean, you're just always like, okay, it's an irrational act, and to examine it from the other side of it, from the sympathy, this being sympathetic to somebody that wants to do this, was really interesting to explore. And as I said, there's a lot of humor in the novel, and then I thought that there was three incredibly well written roles that would translate uh, to a film. And when you're making these quote unquote smaller films, you always have to figure out ways to punch above your weight. And I thought that if I could write the screenplay the way the novel was written, then we would be able to attract the cast that would get attention for this film.
And then how did you cast it? Because you've got three main characters, which are wonderful actors: Allison Pill, Sarah Gadon, and of course the always amazing Mare Winningham, who is, I just love her and almost everything she does. She's amazing. So how did you cast this?
Yeah, so we had a great casting director out of LA, Heidi Levitt, and she really sort of, I mean, it's interesting. Like if I had sent it down, I think it wouldn't have got any traction whatsoever. But a great casting director can sort of make it a buzzy screenplay, and she did that. And we were sort of looking at a lot of actors and in different combinations, and the character of that Allison Pill plays, Yoli, could have been really 10 years older, and then that would have affected her sister's role and her mother's role. And so it was important for us to get Yoli first, even though I'd spoken about to Sarah Gadon about playing Alf a few years earlier. And so Heidi got it to Allison's manager, read it, responded, then Allison read it. And I remember the first call, Allison called me and was like, "I'm kind of mad at you." I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, I kind of have my life all planned, and now this is gonna screw it up." And I was quite happy to screw up her plans. And it's interesting because I didn't realize that well, I ran it by her, but Allison and Sarah went to the same high school. They'd worked on a MOW 20 years ago.
Oh wow.
they sort of had really similar backgrounds, and then Mare and Allison also did a Broadway play together. So there was a lot of familiarity between the three of them, that made it really easy to. I mean, great act. Let's face it, great actors can hate each other and still have fantastic on-screen chemistry. But these
Right.
three genuinely really liked each other, so it was just that much easier.
Yeah, it does make it easier when they get along, I suppose. But you're right. We heard about, co-stars not getting along, and yet on camera, you would never know that. So,
E- Exactly.
yeah. But with these three wonderful actresses, I mean, because it's such an intimate movie, obviously dealing with a very difficult subject. Eh, how did you, as a director, direct them to approach their roles?
Well, I mean, they're all really like fiercely intelligent, and they've done a lot of stuff. So sometimes they directed me, in the best sense of the word. So Allison was really adamant that she wanted to rehearse, and like usually, I mean, the 20-day shoot. You don't really have the luxury of doing that, but because she had to quarantine for 2 weeks, because Mara had a quarantine for 2 weeks, and then Sarah was in Toronto that she could come out. It kind of made it possible, and so it was actually a great thing for me as a director to learn is we really workshopped each of the scenes, and it wasn't like a rewrite, but it was a polish on all of them. So we were very specific about what, especially the backbone of the film, are the number of these hospital scenes. And by the time we got on set, we'd sort of answered all the questions that you might usually answer on set, and it made for a much more efficient process. And I felt like they were all great collaborators with me. I mean, I don't typically shot list because I do want to see how actors are going to move in a space rather than essentially your pieces of furniture that are going to tell you what to do. And I just and you want to watch what the DP needs and all that kind of stuff. So I worked with them like it was a conversation. I remember Mare. There's a eulogy scene, and Mare that Mare's character, Lottie, performs, and she's like, it's really not resonating with me, and the rest of the way the scenes are. Like, can you just look at it again and take another stab at it? And I can only in the best way. And I was like, I had a million things to do at that point. So I emailed the author Miriam Tays and I said, I know your mother is that person in your life. Can you just give me some like, I don't know, bullet points or something like that? And 3 hours later, the whole eulogy arrives. And so it's that idea that conversation continued, in prep and obviously all the way through shooting.
That's amazing, and that and Miriam, the author of the book, was so available to you and able to help you with this, as you're filming. I mean, that doesn't necessarily always happen.
No, I mean, and she was, like I said, because it's her own it's a novel, but it's really her own lived experience. Um, all the actors spoke extensively with her. All our heads of departments, used her as a resource for I know our production designer had some of her actual items that they put it like in the house and stuff like that. So there was a level of authenticity that, because of her being generous, really, I think, helped with the production.
That's really amazing that she, as again, that she's so available for you. The gosh, there's so much in this movie. Let's talk about what was the most difficult part of shooting this.
Well, the difficult part was really just the looming, like we shot during COVID, that we'd always be shut down. I think our insurance said if we had 3 positive tests, then it wouldn't happen. And everybody was on a hard out in terms of they had other places to be, et cetera, et cetera. We're right against Christmas. So on like day 11, myself and a dolly grip tested positive for COVID. And we're just like, okay, where are we going? And it turned out to be, and I immediately called this guy. And it's like, and I was being super careful because and as were the actors, like nobody was screwing around with this at all. And I called him and I said, do you think you're positive? He goes, no, I know I'm not. And so, and they turned out to be, both of us turned out to be negative, fortunately, but you're positive. We had to shut down production for a day, and
Okay.
we were positive until we weren't. And then, but the rest of it, it wasn't difficult. Like I mean, all the actors, like there's definitely some places they go, um, that I mean, Mara's first day on set was some really heavy scenes that I kind of hadn't realized, like, oh, wow, we might have scheduled that a bit differently, but she was phenomenal in performing them. And Allison certainly could go to those places almost. I mean, I can't really speak for her, but it's seemingly on the drop of a dime. Like she could be like talking about what she wants to have for lunch, then action, and she's like, and then she's Yoli at her depths of despair, and then cut. What do you think? It's like, oh, that was amazing. So, there wasn't that. I think we all felt like we were incredibly lucky to be working during the pandemic. So I think that, and I think that the material that Miriam had started with was everybody really responded to, that we didn't want to screw it up. So it wasn't difficult in the sense of actually shooting it.
That's good. Let's talk about Donald Lowe. Is it how you say it? Donald Lowe, who plays the
Donald, yeah,
father?
yeah.
Yeah, a little bit about him and his character and how that all played out for you,
Yeah.
as and casting him also. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, that's Heidi. He was around. I think he was finishing something in Canada, so he was around, and I mean, he's been in so much stuff as a character actor, but like when the opening of the scene is him in front of a train track, and we assume something bad is going to happen, and he had like gone into town to buy specific glasses. He talked to Miriam extensively. He'd done all this Mennonite research. Like he went deep, even though he's not actually on screen that much. And I remember, like, because we had to get out of that location very quickly, I was just sort of under a black hood rather than a whole video village in the tent, and just watching we had a really wide shot, and just being so moved by the precision when he put the glasses down on the ground, and how it kind of almost breaks your heart. And then the interesting thing about the film is we do use these flashbacks, and I think for me, one of the strongest scenes is when he's talking about going to Pierre Elliott Trudeau's funeral, and just how there's a wistfulness, a beautifulness, and also a smallness of the character that almost breaks your heart. And I think why he just was able to ride that line so wonderfully.
Yes, he really was. How much did for you in this film? I mean, the Mennonites, obviously, that's a big part of this movie. How much research and whatnot did you have to do about the Mennonites?
We did a lot of like, for the looks and how Mennonite were they. We talked to Miriam. Like, so for example, there's a steamship that we sort of replicated as a bit of the art and stuff. But I think that there was far more in the book, but I think we just wanted to hint at there was an oppressiveness to that community, and that sort of infected a lot of people, but try to ride the wave of not going too far down that road, because we felt it would just slow the story down in the present. So it was almost like we wanted to give, a little flavor of it, but not a full course.
And it is. It's just enough. It's you get a feel for what they were going through. Just in life. And you filmed it you filmed it in Canada. Did you film it near Toronto?
No, we were 3 hours north of Toronto. So we're in a town called North Bay, and it was great because at that point, there wasn't a lot of COVID cases and stuff like that, and we could move around fairly easily. And it was actually nice just to be up and away from everything to be filming.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did you film it? What time did you film this?
We finished just at the end of 2020.
So December of 2020.
Yeah, so we finished principal photography, I think, like December 20th in 2020. So.
Before we got vaccines and all the other things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there was no, there's none of that then.
Well, because where you filmed, I'm always interested for where films are filmed. I've always been a credit watcher since I was a child. But that's one of the things I always look for. Like, where did they film this? And always interesting. But you filmed it, obviously during winter.
Yeah.
It's a little bleak in that respect. The topic is not cheery. So, what did you all do when you weren't filming to keep everyone's spirits up?
We just drank and did drugs extensively. I mean, that was it. It was just it was just debauchery, orgies, that whole thing. But besides that, no, it was, it was kind of a bit like it, because we were all like, we had these pods and all this kind of stuff that we had these ramen nights every Saturday night. Like it was, people just like hung out with each other, and it was interesting, and it was great. Like it seems, well, it doesn't, because we're still sort of in the pandemic. Um, it was sort of great to be around people. Like everybody was there, and you couldn't see anybody else, so it was a bit like going to camp. So we'd have drinks in people's rooms and stuff like that, and it was, yeah, but I mean, certainly, and well, actually, no, the North Bay was, you could go to restaurants then too, so we would do that. So it felt, relatively speaking, compared to some other parts of the world, like even Toronto was way more locked down than North Bay was. But we were, like I said, we were all like, I wouldn't take the elevator in the hotel just because I was so paranoid of getting COVID at that point.
Right. Not to have your movie shut down for sure. So there was extra reason to be more cautious, I suppose, too. Um, for the so why did you choose North Bay? How did that become the place you
It's
decided to film it?
Yeah, I've shot there before, but I mean, the book actually is set in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which would have been very bleak then as well. But North Bay kind of just worked out for mostly financial reasons. There were some funds that we could access up there and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was, for me, it was visually what I wanted for the film, but it also had the extra advantage of being, they had money they were they were giving us.
Good. That's always a good reason to go do
That's a
things.
great reason in the film business.
A very good reason. Let's talk a little bit about Sarah Gadon, because I don't think I've seen her in anything before, and she's absolutely beautiful and wonderful in this role. And her chemistry with Allison, and as you said, they went to school together. Let's talk about that a little bit too. Their sisterly chemistry in this film.
Yeah, so Sarah's been in a bunch of stuff. I think she's in some David Cronenberg films. She was in a bit in one of the True Detectives. She was in the other Margaret Atwood series. She was the star of it, called Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
No, sorry, not Handmaid's Tale. Alias Grace, the other one.
No.
That I don't know how it was big here, but I don't know if it was anyway. Yeah, I mean, she's really smart, and like even and then just watching what her and Allison could do together and the language that they had. They were obviously, well, I know, obviously, but they were incredibly comfortable around each other. And it's fun when you cast and it feels like they're sisters. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, because I come from a family of 6 and we all kind of look different. So you can justify, well, that doesn't, but it's nicer when they do. And I mean, she has such an elegance.
Yeah.
Even like she's sitting she can't look bad. Like, I mean, it's
Right.
hard to make Sarah look bad.
No, beautiful.
And it was a nice contrast, not that in any way, shape, or form Allison looked bad, but just the idea that this almost porcelain doll, quote unquote, as opposed to this other person who's just trying to get her life together. And so yeah, and then we showed both in the post-production process. We showed both Allison and Sarah cuts of the film, and they were, again, wonderful in their suggestions and their, and looking at the film, because I didn't want to show them the film, because I was like, you're actors, how can you possibly be objective about this? And Sarah's like, I dated an editor for 12 years. And Allison's like, I'm married to a filmmaker. Screw you. Show me the film. And it was great. It was really wonderful, because they both had stuff that we hadn't thought about. So
Really? So there were some changes and things that were made after the
yeah, like it's
for
always
the
amazing. It's amazing to me, like in post-production, how much you change things. Like it's the adage, you write it once in the screenplay, once when you're filming, and the third time when you're editing. But it's incredible what you think you need, what you don't need, and how it just keeps you just keep refining it, and how other people, oh right, that makes sense. I mean, some notes you're like, no, I need it for this, but other notes you're like, oh, I never really thought of that. Like I didn't see it through those eyes almost. And so it's important, obviously, in that process to get people to look at the film.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting that,
Yeah.
because I don't think many directors do that with their actors?
I don't know, and
Production?
I hadn't before. I probably had. I'm trying to think. Most of them, well, most of them want to see a cut before they come to, not a cut. They want most of them want to see what it is before they come to the film festival and go, okay, what am I supporting here? But like we didn't show Americut. I can't remember how many people. I think that might have been unique too. I can't remember.
Interesting, interesting. What happens if they don't like the film afterwards? They
Well,
go, "Oh."
I think we all knew when we were shooting that we were like it was going to turn out well. And again, like Sarah, like I remember Sarah asked for a cut on her there's a big scene where she's in the bed and she really breaks down, and she's like, I think it should be on me for that. And it's but she's but her and it was like, right, why aren't we on you? And it was like, and I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And then when you go back and look at the footage, it was like, yeah, of course we should be on her. This is her big line. And sometimes it's not, you just get used to the footage and you don't question it. And when other people see it through different eyes, and you're like, right, that like I could have easily had a reason for like a technical reason or performance reason or sort of a theoretical reason, but she was right.
That's interesting. I could suppose, yeah, well, maybe she might not have been right. Then what happens after that too? So you end up in a deeper discussion, I suppose.
Well, again, that's the art of it too. Like, ultimately, as the writer director, I'm gonna make the final call, and hopefully, and it didn't come to in this one at all. But there's some times where it's like you have a disagreement. You're like, okay, well, I hope I'm not. I hope when it goes out into the world, this isn't a mistake. But I feel pretty strongly about the decision.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful film. It is a difficult topic, but even though it is, it actually there's something really wonderful about it, and I mean, in the sense, don't it's not a depressing down film because I don't want to give too much away, but it is uplifting in its own way too.
Oh, exactly. I think it's a hope. I think it's a really hopeful film.
Yes,
I think you come out of it a bit through the ringer, but ultimately feeling hopeful in some ways.
100%. That's exactly the way I felt afterwards. So yeah, it really is that. Where can people see my puny little sorrows?
Yeah, so it's
Puny
on
sorrows. All my puny sorrows. Sorry, I should get the right title. Sorry.
all my pieces. Yeah, it's on VOD now. So I guess anywhere you get films like iTunes or any of those Google places, anywhere you buy VOD films, it's there now.
It's everywhere. It's streaming somewhere, I'm sure too.
Yes.
Michael, what are you working on next?
That is a good question. I mean, there's a few things that I'm sort of in the process of either developing or finishing, but I never like to jinx anything by saying, okay, this is going to be the next one, because invariably the things that I think are going to go don't, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to do this instead. So nothing that is going that I can say, okay, here today I'm doing this.
So do you prefer writing your own screenplays generally? You wrote this one and you directed it, or do you just prefer? What's your preference? Do you like only doing screenplays that you have written, or do you want to?
No, I sort of do a lot. I mean, I do a fair bit of television as well. And it's always nice just to have it. Like the writing is, for me, by far the hardest. It's just like it sends me into places I don't want to be. Directing, it's got its own challenges, but comparatively speaking, there's people that make you coffee to get you stuff. There's a whole team around that's trying to, carry out your vision, and it's a different energy. But the films I've done, I've written them all, but would be happy to receive a screenplay that I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. Let's make this. So yeah, like I said, I've directed a lot of television that I haven't written, but so far not a feature.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I wish you much success with All My Puny Sorrows. Really, everyone seek it out. It's a lovely film. It is inspirational, but there's a lot of depth to it, a lot of layers, and it's a very wonderful film. So thank you for being on the show, Michael.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you have missed any of the Jan Price shows all about movies, you can go to my website, thejanpriceshow.com, where all the shows are archived, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast on the iHeart Podcast Network, Apple, Google, Spotify, you name it. We're there. Also, go to my YouTube channel, and while you're there, subscribe and like it and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Jan Price Show. Thank you all for listening.